So finding varieties that grow well in min-till establishments, as well as being ploughed in, I think is possibly key going forward. Beans are quite sensitive to soil surface compaction, and deep loosening of the soil profile has been shown to increase yields, but it can lead to uneven emergence and risks not meeting optimum.
That was George Goodwin, the Managing Director of Senova, who joined me on today's episode of Inside the Pot, where we're discussing what companies such as Senova are looking to achieve from their breeding programs and what's coming down the innovation pipeline. I'm Matt Webster, and welcome to Inside the Pot from the Processors and Growers Research Organisation. So let's dive straight into my interview with George from Senova. First of all, I asked him for a quick introduction to Senova, the company.
Yeah, so Senova are an independent seed marketing and crop development company with what we think is quite an innovative approach to the market. We're also one half of a joint venture called UK Pulses with Berry & Sons, where we're breeding beans. Yes, so as an organisation, we market a range of pulse species, but predominantly combinable peas and beans.
Just explain for our listeners exactly what's involved in marketing a pulse variety.
So the marketing is sort of all aspects from bringing through material from breeders, screening them over here to assess suitability, and then putting them out into the market. So we are promoting them to seed merchants and multipliers and working with end users on any quality aspects that they might have to help pull through and possibly work on contracts that might be available.
Variety choice is often down to what grower wants to achieve and the conditions they're expecting to grow the crop in. So information is important, and I guess this is where the PGRO work comes in. Can you remind us about some of the lines you currently have on the descriptive list and what their strengths are?
Yeah, so we're in the very fortunate situation to have 3 of the highest yielding winter beans on the PGRO descriptive list. So Vincent is very much affirming its place at the moment in the market as one of the highest yielding varieties on the list, with excellent downy mildew resistance and quite big seed size. Vesper has been around for a few years now and is definitely a favourite amongst growers. Very high yielding, good resistance to chocolate spot, and standing at harvest time. And then we've also got some newer varieties coming through. So one of those is Ninja, which is a very early short plant type with very high protein, and Miro, which is another early short plant type that might encourage growers sort of in the north maybe to revisit beans in the future, which would be great. And then we're also marketing some pea varieties. Notably at the moment would be Baptiste.
Now, in terms of the attributes of these varieties, you've mentioned some of them already: yield, seed size, disease management. What kind of attributes are you looking for when you're developing these varieties, and which would you say is the most important?
Yeah, yield is obviously important, and ensuring the yields seen on the DL transfer on farm is really important to us. We're also looking for clean material, so varieties that have good rust resistance, I think, is becoming a bit more important. We want to ensure that all the beans work for farmers and farming systems, and that's kind of a key focus for us now. So finding varieties that grow well in min-till establishments, as well as being ploughed in, I think is possibly key going forward. Beans are quite sensitive to soil surface compaction, and deep loosening of the soil profile has been shown to increase yields, but it can lead to uneven emergence and risks not meeting optimum plant densities to maximize yield. So finding a bean that's adaptable to all cultivation methods and drilling is probably high on the agenda now for us.
Grower feedback is obviously very important. How do you go about interacting with farmers who grow the varieties that you breed?
I like to think that we work quite well with growers and can support them in various ways. Notably from our end, it's probably variety advice, but also sharing contacts within the industry, possibly either for crop marketing or sort of agronomic queries.
So how do you work with the PGRO on initiatives such as the descriptive list? I'm guessing that the PGRO and Senova would take different roles in this. And why do you think this work is important for pulse growing in the UK?
Yeah, so Senova and PGRO have a long-standing relationship. They're obviously the UK's centre of excellence for peas and beans, after all, and it's a relationship I see continuing long into the future. PGRO are obviously the experts, and so we always look to them for advice and trust the information that we receive is always backed by solid research.
Yeah.
And the team there is very amenable, very easy to work with, and are obviously specialists in pulses. So all of our seed testing for certified seed goes through PGRO's lab. We work quite closely in trialing both private trials and with them, as you say, on the descriptive list trials. And anything that we find unusual or don't really understand ourselves, we know that we can always go and talk to the team there to get a bit more understanding, a bit more information, and always take on their guidance, which I think has been quite key for us as a business.
I want to ask you a bit about sustainability now. This has to be part of your thoughts in pretty much everything you do now when it comes to breeding lines. What can you tell us about the development work you are doing to breed more resilient and sustainable crops for farmers to grow?
Yeah, so if we look at the winter bean program, UK pulses breed winter beans, which are usually placed on moisture retentive soils that are possibly less suitable for spring drilling and are generally more resilient than that of other pulses to soil conditions. There's no secret that the UK's weather patterns are changing, and we will have to adapt both as growers and breeders to ensure material remains suitable for the UK. We're always looking at moisture related traits like drought tolerance and the ability to withstand waterlogging. So, strong root systems are becoming front and center. But we also want to make sure that we're breeding material that's clean. Races can change. Chemistry is potentially going to be more restricted in the future. And I think the mindset of growers is changing too. There's less sort of desire to use pesticides now than there was, and anything that we can work on to sort of really affirm that less is more mentality is a step forward, I think.
And in the context of climate change, how are you as a company viewing the climatic challenges we face here in the UK?
Yeah, climate change is a real challenge. The way we look at it is that the weather is becoming more variable. We're having more frequent radical weather patterns than we've had previously. So, consistency in performance is becoming even more important, particularly consistency across years. Sort of in that way, for us, it's looking into the trials evaluation and the data analysis, looking at trying to hone down on the information and work out the results that correlate well between years and sites, and then judge the material on that basis rather than focusing on any one year in particular.
Yeah, I can imagine there are a lot of challenges to take into account when you're breeding something that you want to launch in 3 to 5 years' time. Let's look at marketing varieties. Given that the descriptive list is just a month or so away now, how do you go about marketing varieties to farmers once you actually have something that you're happy with?
Yeah, so the marketing of a new variety is always exciting. Partway through the registration process, we apply for a name to replace our breeder's code. We then look at the variety itself, identify the key attributes, sort of the unique selling points of it, and establish its positioning as to how we feel it benefits the marketplace, because every variety has a story. Senova have an excellent marketing manager who works with our marketing team to build all the creative and advertising that accompanies and supports that variety, and launches it into the market. And then we push it from a C1C perspective, hoping to engage the merchants and filter all that information down into growers.
So, around that time of year when you'll be processing the data from 2025's growing season and compiling it with previous year's data, obviously where it exists, is there anything you can tell us about what's coming down the line soon?
Yeah, we're at a really interesting point in the pulse breeding year. We've been looking at a lot of our trial results, and there are some very exciting lines that we've got in trial. We have a lot of green peas coming through the system, green protein peas, and I think that there is a need for another one in the market. We've seen a lot of yellows coming through in recent years. Pulses will remain a key focus for Senova. Personally, I have a really strong fondness to pulses, particularly vining peas. But for now, I think it's safe to say, if not too cliche, watch this space. We'll certainly have something exciting coming through soon.
That was George Goodwin, the Managing Director of Senova, explaining how the company goes about pulse variety development. Thanks to George for joining us, and you can join the PGRO to hear the launch of the 2026 descriptive list to hear how all the varieties that have been in trials have performed over the past year on the 27th of November. There is a link to sign up for the online launch in the show notes and is also on www.pgro.org. Make sure you like and subscribe to the podcast so that you never miss a future episode, and we will see you next time.